What's up, bikers? Episode 203. Good Lord. How did we even get here? 203 episodes. That's so rad. I'm super excited today. We're going to have Roxy on from Roxy's Ride and Inspire. She is a creator out of Europe and does a lot of skills coaching stuff over there. I'm super excited to talk to her. So before we get started, though, I definitely want to mention real quick, shout out to the sponsors. Apparently Black Friday starts like 2 weeks before Halloween nowadays, but if you go over to Ari's site, they have a big Black Friday sale going on, and there's a bunch of stuff over there that that I've been enjoying, at least. So the Temp Peak, you guys have heard me talk about, that's on sale. You guys have heard me talk about the Delano, that's on sale. The basically everything's on sale. So if you've been thinking about a new bike, maybe now's the time to look at it. So go over there and check it out. The Temp Peak is definitely what I've been riding a lot of lately. It's their full-size e-bike, 170 mils travel both front and back, and it's been a lot of fun. And especially coming off an injury, it's been nice to not have to have the fitness at such a high level. So let's see what else is going on. You guys know that for a long time, Tasco has been a supporter of the channel. They have also a Black Friday sale going on. Normally, I would tell you, go ahead and use my code B1KER and save 20%, or you can swing over here to this Black Friday sale, and some of this stuff is like 70% off. I will say that all the stuff on the Black Friday sale is not like, they don't have all the sizes, so you might get lucky, you might not. But yeah, there's some good stuff there. Anyways, if I was going to the site right now to buy anything, I'm super in love with these mullet jerseys that they have. And basically it's 2 jerseys for the price of like $10 more than a regular jersey. But if you use that code B1KER and save some money, then it's actually cheaper than a regular jersey, and you're getting 2. So it's like one side's one thing, one side's the other. And honestly, when you flip it inside out, you can't tell. The seams are like perfect the same on both sides, so they're really rad. I would definitely consider one of those, especially now in the colder time of the year where having a long sleeve is good. Outside of that, Cali Protectives has been also a longtime supporter of the channel, and they have their Cascade helmet, which is about $260. It has a really good clean look to it. It kind of reminds me of like a POC design, or maybe sort of like Fox. And I've always really enjoyed this helmet. Super comfortable, but I always thought, man, that's really kind of expensive for a half lid. But if you use code B1Cali30, you save 30%. It makes it a little bit more reasonable. The big plus side to Cali is they have a free crash replacement. Just the other day, somebody was telling me that they had a friend that crashed in a Cali helmet and just went out and bought a new one. And they, I was like, why did they do that? I mean, you can get it. All you got to do is ship it back to them. They'll send you a new one. And the person was like, oh, well, they didn't register. You don't need to do that. Don't worry about that. Just hit them up. Tell them you crashed. Send them the helmet. They'll send you a new one. It's that easy. It really is. The people over at Cali are super chill. I've enjoyed working with them for the last, I don't even know how many years. So they've been a lot of fun. Anyways, let's get on with this and bring Roxy on. Hey, Roxy, how's it going?
Hello. Amazing. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for you to be here too. It's like the different side of the world for you though. So it's evening there. I'm here drinking coffee. I don't know, what do you got in the mug?
Tea. Evening chill out tea.
There you go. Yeah, I did tea for a little while. I get like acid reflux, and sometimes like my stomach just gets all out of whack. And a couple months ago, I had a stint where I just couldn't even drink coffee anymore. It was like messing my stomach up. But
that must have been a challenging time though.
Yeah, it's harder to find tea that has the punch of coffee though. But apparently they got it out there now. I found some stuff that was like I don't know, I think they add caffeine or something like that. But man, that stuff will knock you off your socks too.
Yeah, definitely. Usually when I drink tea at night, I don't drink it to wake me up though.
Yeah. You know, I don't feel like it really affects me that way, but I think coffee's like the only one that really, really gives me like a zing. I know my wife will say like she doesn't like, sometimes if she drinks soda, like it makes her feel jittery or something. I'm like, I could drink like 10 sodas and I wouldn't even notice. But not that I do, but I mean, anyways. How long you been doing YouTube?
I've been doing YouTube since about 5 years now, but I only started YouTube because I've been coaching for many, like a longer time than that. And I started YouTube because I just found, from one thing, I found mostly male YouTubers teaching skills, and I wanted to bring out some tips, especially for shorter riders and women, because many of the tips that men give others don't really work for women. And I wanted to counteract some of the rather dangerous tips that are out there, because after all, we shouldn't forget that everyone can upload on YouTube. That's why it's called YouTube, because everyone can do it. So there's no filter.
Right.
So like on Wikipedia, at least, or Wikipedia, you say in America, at least someone checks it before it goes online. But on YouTube, everyone can upload. And that's why, of course, there's so many contradicting info out there. And me being a full-time coach, I noticed that I just wanted some pro coaching to counteract the bro coaching out there. And that's why I started. And it's been almost 5 years now.
Yeah. It's a good point that you make, because I mean, even I think there's two ends of that. It's like, on one hand, there's definitely some people giving some really bad advice. And then on the other hand, I think sometimes the way that one person explains it works well for one person, but maybe doesn't like resonate with somebody else at all. And so when you actually have that other perspective, it's like, oh, this person, like, they speak to me. They speak my language.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
it's really
no,
good.
I think it's great. So I'm not saying that any of it is bad or wrong per se, not at all. And I just think that
Mhm.
it's, for one thing, that female perspective was missing because there were so few female coaches putting out their stuff. And as you say, it is good because different perspectives may help some people. And I'm sure that everything out there, every content creator who puts out stuff is helping some people, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's always important that we find that person, as you said, who resonates with us and whose explanations work for us. However, the only problem I see as a full-time coach is when people start watching millions of different videos and then they get completely confused because everyone's saying something else. And that's
Yeah.
where I think the main difference between a YouTube video, also mine, like also the content I put out, the main difference between if I put out a tutorial and coaching is that the tutorial will always be generic. So I'm trying to help as many people as possible, but of course it won't be for you. So when I'm working with you personally, then I would adapt my coaching cues to fit you. And that's the biggest difference between professional coaching, where the coach adapts his or her methods and the whole movement he teaches or she teaches to you, and YouTube, where it's generic tips, or not even generic tips, just like, hey, this worked for me, try it out, which of course isn't wrong. It's just maybe not helpful for the person watching.
Sometimes too, I'm sure there's a balance of creating good, like a good tutorial, but then also creating content that is watchable. And sometimes I feel like you probably have to give up one or the other,
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's also, I talked about this in my podcast, actually, that I said, like, it always depends whether the content is made by a content creator who has the goal of getting as many watches as possible. Then it needs to be faster cut. You may even decide not to bring across the content in the best way for a learning goal. Like if you have the goal, your client needs to learn as much as possible, you may want to deliver it in a different way than if your goal is, I want people to watch as long as possible and I want them to share it with as many people as possible. So we always need to keep that in mind when we're consuming tutorials that have lots and lots of watches, that the goal of this person was maybe to get a lot of watches, which is also okay. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just that maybe your learning experience from this may not be as high as you will get from a tutorial that has fewer watches, because the goal wasn't to get watches. It was actually to get, as you said, the point across effectively.
Yeah, I think, obviously at the end of the day, being in person with somebody is going to be a million times better. But,
not only
financially,
not
some people
necessarily. Like it depends. Like I work 90% online with my clients. I have an online coaching platform, and it doesn't mean you have to be with a person, but what matters is that you get precise coaching cues in the right order for your bike and your body. So
how do you do that online? Do you have them like send you like a video of them doing a corner or something like that, and then go from there?
Well, no, I have step-by-step home training courses. So it's a practice
Okay.
library with methodical drills. So I start at a specific point and build them up step by step so that their body actually has the time and repetition to build movement patterns. And then they send me videos. And then I start to adapt the next moves to their current skill level. So that's why it's super important. And the clients, I'm currently working with many different clients, but those clients who make the most progress are those who send me videos regularly, because then I can do what my real job is, which is provide feedback for them, for their body, for their background, for their abilities or disabilities. I work with people, for example, amputees as well, and then we need to adapt the moves. Come back to your question, they will have step-by-step drills on an online library. They will go out and practice. They will video themselves, send them to me, get personalized feedback, and then they will go out and practice again with that.
Yeah. That's it's interesting, to think about it that way. And you definitely changed my mind, because at first I was like, nah, you definitely want to be in front of somebody, but I can see what you're saying. Like that that aspect would work well too. So then you can actually have a wider reach on where you
Not,
can
not
provide services to.
not only that, like the wider reach is definitely an advantage, but like from the point of my client, the biggest advantage is that you can work with some of the best coaches worldwide without needing to travel there. And
Yeah.
it's much cheaper because you don't need to fly there, you don't need to go there, you don't have the whole journey, you don't have that time. And it's cheaper because remote coaching is always cheaper for both sides. So I will, for example, provide professional feedback for only, at the moment, 39 euros. And if I'm out coaching in person, I'll take like 6 times per hour. So it's much cheaper for my client, because my client is only paying for that feedback. But when he's with me, he's also paying for the whole experience, which takes up much longer. And he won't even be able to then go out and practice, get in the reps, actually make progress, and send in videos again. So he's spending 6 times more without making the same progress. So actually, the remote coaching from the point of my client is not only way cheaper, but much more effective, because all you need to build skills is you need to practice the right things in the right order and allow your body and brain the time they need, which is not a few hours. It's usually days, weeks, months, depending on your age. And that's why, like, looking back, and I've been doing this full time for over 15 years now, the people who have made most progress working with me have been the people who have been working remotely with me and sending me in videos regularly, and then coming in live for the tweaks. Like we meet like once a year for the tweaks. But actually, if I compare that with people who have only been working with me in person, their progress is much slower, or they spend like 20 time fold on money if they want to come every week, And that's the big advantage also of online everything, of online coaching, of remote coaching, that you can offer the type of coaching that you would usually only offer your super premium clients at a super high rate, at a super affordable rate, and people can work with you from all over the world and actually make the progress. And that's what I love about online coaching. And that's, to come back to your original question, the reason why I started YouTube, because I wanted to bring that out into the world and to change, as you said, like open the mind, like, oh my God, yeah, I would have never thought about that. Sure, you can do that.
Well,
with
I totally agree with you when you first started that out, and you said that there weren't enough like women creators like putting out content, and I totally agree with you there. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting in that same sentence, that you said that tips for people that are smaller, not only just women. And I'm like, I'm trying to like visualize, like, what kind of things are you talking about there? Because I'm a big guy, I'm like 6'2", I'm over 200 pounds, like 240 pounds or whatever. So it's like, I'm huge. So in my mind, like, I'm like, how could it be any different? Like, I don't know.
It's super different. And it's so amazing, because I'm 5'1". I weigh about 100 pounds. So it's like kind of the opposite.
Right.
Like if you look at like the scale, it's like, you're here, I'm here. And for example, just to give you an example, during a manual front wheel lift, for you, think about how light the bike is compared to your body weight. right?
Yeah.
So
Makes
you
sense.
bring your mass rearwards, your long legs, your big body mass rearward, and the bike will just follow. You just do a tiny movement and it's like, whoop, the front is up. With me,
Yeah.
it's like I need to go into almost my complete leg extension and do the move like tenfold as a dynamic, and the front wheel will lift this far. And that's the tweaks where you need to find, for one thing, for example, before preloading the bike and then doing the manual will really help women to perform a manual, and their timing is key. But if I tell you to preload the bike and then do the manual, you'll probably loop out. And those are the things that we need to adjust and then see why they're working or not. And that's why, for example, you would probably say to get into manual, yeah, just move rearward, because for you it works. You just move your mass rearward and the front wheel will lift. With me, I move rearward, nothing happens. So I need to push the bike forward forcefully after having loaded, and then the bike will lift, because then that way I can push the bike out in front of me. And those are the tweaks that I needed to learn, because I went to a lot of certifications for coaches where all of the instructors were men, and they're like, yeah, you just need to move rearward. I'm like, yeah, okay, but we're coaches. We need to be able to provide specific cues to our client. And I'm here and I'm telling you it doesn't work. And since I was the only woman back then, also in these coaching certifications, they would always just say, no, we don't get your problem. And that's how I started getting into these things. And then I noticed, okay, it's not only me, it's other women who have these problems. It's other shorter riders who have these problems. Started analyzing, especially teenagers, how they do things. Started watching a lot of videos, analyzing them and saying, okay, look, she's doing it completely differently than him. And what is she doing differently? And that's why I started YouTube, to really share these insights.
So what's your background then? Were you decided, or you always wanted to be a coach? Were you a pro rider? Were you like just somebody that was just loved mountain biking? Where
do you want me to start?
Where, I don't know, training wheels.
Okay. So if I go way, way back, my mom, she used to be a ski instructor and then a windsurf instructor. And he's not really my father, but my biological father, he used to be a tennis pro and a tennis teacher. So I could kind of say it's in my blood that I wanted to be a coach. But then I studied translating and interpreting in Heidelberg in Germany. So I studied something because I needed something. You know, in Germany, people are very, let's say, safety focused. So I wanted to study something, to go to university, to have like a serious job. And then I finished that. And then I was like, okay, this is a super boring job, like sitting on my laptop all day translating stuff. And I studied translating for law texts and what do you call them? Bedienungsanleitungen in German, which is manuals for like devices. Super boring, but you know, I was
it
like,
pays the bills, right?
Yeah, and the good thing is I can work from everywhere, and that's why I did it. And then I started traveling, and that's how I then kind of got into mountain biking, because I was dancing also. I was dancing a lot. I was dancing for shows, for musical shows and stuff. And I hurt my knee, so I couldn't dance anymore. And then friends of mine, like, actually I got to know two friends, and they really, well, they started with mountain biking, and they said, you'll love it. And I was like, okay, well, I always liked playing in the dirt, so why not? Let me start mountain biking. So I started mountain biking with them, and I was super scared in the beginning because I crashed on my first ride because someone said, speed is your friend, just follow my lead. And I crashed into a rock, like really, I exploded against that rock, like with my face. So after that, I was like extremely fearful rider. And luckily, like nowadays, that's why I started looking into fears, started looking into how can I become more confident riding. And that's how I started looking into coaching, because all the coaching tips I got didn't really help me. And that's why nowadays I do what I do, because then I started taking, I think, in total, I have about 27 coaching certifications from 5 different countries nowadays. I started taking one more and one more and one more just to coach myself in the beginning, just because I wanted to improve. And then I went to university again, got another degree. Then I got my psychological counselor to really be able to work with people who are super fearful. So nowadays I work with people who have traumas, who after a crash are so traumatized that they can hardly ride anymore. And went to university again, got another diploma in neuromental training, which is mental training based on neuroscience to be able to really work with your brain, to know how your brain works. And now, as I said, that's why I love doing this, mainly because I know myself how debilitating it feels if you are so fearful and so really paralyzed by your own fears, because of my riding experience when I started.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. It's one of those things. I mean, and not only from an accident, it's one of those things, even just as a beginning rider. Like, I have been riding bikes since, I was a kid, and it's always been a part of my life. So for me, there's so many things that I completely just take for granted that I don't even think about at all. And anytime that my wife and I are showing somebody new how to ride, it's really quite an eye opener of like, oh my God, like I forgot that something like just controlling your brakes through this corner, which to me doesn't seem like it has any exposure, but to them is like, they feel like they're on the side of a cliff. And I'm like, oh, this is just a hill. It's like not a big deal, and because they're not as in control with the bike as they are with their own body, they feel like super fearful. And I've seen plenty of people that are just starting to ride, like actually like get off and like maybe run down the trail because they're just afraid of this one section. And they're not sections that they should be afraid of, like. And so that's very interesting that you have all that education. You're probably the most educated trainer that I've ever heard of. But like that, you have that ability to really use those different resources to communicate with people. That's amazing.
I think it's a huge difference. So you said something super interesting there. You said I learned it as a kid, and we learn differently as a kid than we learn when we learn if we learn when we're adults, because simply our brain is still developing as a child. So your prefrontal cortex, which is where the logic mind is, doesn't really develop in the sense we have it as an adult until you're about 10, 12. So before that, you don't even have that risk assessment. You just do things. And because you don't have that logic mind, you also experiment differently, and you learn over a different mechanism than you learn when you're an adult. So you just try, and you have this self-feedback loop. So you'll try something out, say, okay, that doesn't work, let me do this. And you just do this without thinking about it, because as I said, that logic mind isn't there yet. So as a kid, you'll crash, it's okay, because since that risk awareness isn't there either, you don't think, okay, it's going to happen again. You just think, that hurt. Okay, let me not do that. So you learn from it, but you don't develop the fear straight away. And as an adult, we need to understand why first. And since I was 25 when I learned myself, I knew that I asked all the questions, like, why do I need to do that? Not just, don't tell me I have to do it, tell me why I need to do it. So I really wanted to understand all of it. And that's what I really want to bring into the world, that we can understand it, and then we can, again, allow our body the time it needs and our brain the time it needs, and then we can learn safely. So crashing does not have to be part of the game when you're learning it as an adult. You just need to treat your brain the way it wants to be treated. So you need to learn like an adult and not like a kid. And then you can eventually ride like a kid, but you need to learn as an adult, because your brain is an adult's brain. And it's a huge difference. And as you said also, sorry?
I think it's debatable that that all adults don't act like kids, though, because I definitely have seen some friends that have like no fear complex, where they're just like, and then they'll do it again. And me, I'm like, no.
Yeah, no, definitely. Actually, there's also like brain scans showing that some people don't have this risk awareness. They just don't.
Their frontal lobe never matured. That's what it is.
Yeah. And actually the activation in the amygdala, which is the fear center, is just not there. So there are actually people, usually these are stuntmen or something, they don't even have that risk awareness.
Yeah. Travis Pastrana is one of them for sure, right?
But to also come back to what you said, it's absolutely normal that if you learned this as a kid, because you didn't learn it with the logic mind, you don't know why you're doing stuff. And for you, it would never come to your mind, as you said, why would you break in that corner? Like, and maybe you do even break, but you don't notice because you do it automatically. And sometimes that's why, like, most of the riders who learned when they were a kid and who are the best riders of the world are the worst coaches in the world, because they have no idea what they're doing. They will be like, yeah, just do a bunny hop. It's like, okay, you just do a bunny hop. That's like 7 movement phases in there, you know, like.
That's hilarious to me, because what you just said, it just I felt like you were explaining my life. Because when I watch, I'm a content creator just like you. And when I watch other content creators make videos on how to do things, I'm always like, wow, this is so amazing. Like how they can explain this. And they'll be like explaining a bunny hop, for example, and they'll be saying what they do. And I'm like, that is what I do. Oh my God. But I have zero, like, I cannot tell people. Like, I am horrible at telling anybody. I'm like, yeah, just like you said, just pull up, it'll be fine, or like, yeah, just go around this corner, just tap your brakes a little bit, you'll be fine, and I definitely like experience exactly what you're talking about, because I don't know necessarily what I'm doing. I just know that it works. And I think as I've gotten into creating content, and I don't make how-to videos because I know how bad I am at it. But whenever I watch other people's, then what it does is it does help me, like, when I'm out on the trail, actually think about what I'm doing. And then I'm like, oh no, okay, I do see what they're saying. Like some people will talk about maybe like how you weight your pedals or something like that. And that would be something that I never even like considered I was ever even thinking about doing, compared to like once I saw a video on it. And it's like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I've been training other instructors for many years as well. And when we get really advanced riders, like sometimes even pro riders, and they want to become coaches, those are having the hardest time becoming coaches, because for them, like, there's things they would never think about are actually the things that especially adults, when they're learning, will struggle most with. And for them, first feeling that, understanding it, and then being able to pinpoint it and to explain it. And the next point, which is the actual job of a good coach, is seeing the error. So detecting the error in the rider and then telling him what to change. It's super hard for them. And that's why actually some of the best coaches I've met in my life are people who learned the sport as an adult themselves, because they needed to go through that logic mind. They needed to understand it. And some of the worst coaches I've met in my life were really good riders. Of course, there's exceptions to all of it. So I'm not saying a good rider is always a bad coach. But it's interesting because, as you said, it's just the way the brain works. You do stuff and you have no idea that you're doing it. It's called
I would imagine somebody like me is probably harder to train, just because I have so many years of repetition of potentially bad habits. Like there's a lot of things that I think a good way to explain that is, I started mountain biking. Toe clips was the only way that you rode mountain bikes, and it was, nobody even would consider using a flat pedal. And so I always used toe clips until, I don't know, it's probably only been like 4 years now that I started riding flats again, because everybody was talking about it online. And I was like, you know what? I used to ride BMX. Like, I jump big tabletops and over gaps and stuff like that. So, and then we always were, vans and flat pedals, So I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to try, I'll ride with flats again. And that first ride, putting flat pedals back on, blew my mind how many bad mountain biking habits that I had. And even though I, like, back when I first started, I would have riding technique that I did BMX, but it wouldn't carry over to mountain biking because I was learning to ride mountain bikes with these clips on. So I remember going on that first ride with flats, and it was like a little rock that might have been maybe 8 inches, and I remember going over the rock and both my feet came off my pedals, like smashed the top tube. And I was like, this is insane. And honestly, that made me then at that point realized like, dude, I need to like work on some skill set that obviously I've forgotten. And then on top of that, it was just like, it was a new challenge, you know, to like, can I reteach myself? And it really took a lot of paying attention to like what I was doing incorrectly with clips. Now I can ride clips in a mountain bike situation, and I like rebuilt that muscle memory. But there was a lot of like really crappy habits that I came up with over that time of riding. And it was really strange to me, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it is, as you said, it's the longer someone has been doing something, the harder it is to correct it. Because you can imagine it as if you had a German Autobahn in your brain, and that is what you've always been doing. And now you want to do something different. So it's like you have this tiny little hiking path next to the Autobahn. So of course your brain is going to be like, it's the Autobahn, why am I going to take that little hiking track? So you need to spend a lot of intentional practice to turn that little hiking path into an Autobahn with like a highway with time, and to allow the big highway to grow closed with grass. And you really need to have that intentional willpower to practice a lot. So yes, the longer you've been riding, the more habits you have, the longer it will learn you to unlearn, because unlearning is much harder than learning. And that's why I always say, if you're a beginner, if you're a mountain biker beginner, get the best coach you can get straight away. Because at the beginning, you're like a dry sponge. You will soak up everything. And if you've soaked up bad habits, it's going to take you ages to unlearn. But if you're soaking up the good habits, that's when you're going to skyrocket your skills. And that's why I always say, when you're new to a sport, just get the best coach you can get, because you're going to save so much time. And of course, it's never too late. So even if you have bad habits, you just need a good coach, and you just need the persistence to then practice to change it. It's possible. Yeah.
I think just like anything, you also have to have like the willingness to not only learn, but the willingness to put the time in. Like when I was young and I learned how to play guitar, I would try the same thing over and over and over. Like I put hours and hours and hours into that. And, you know, that's the only way that you get better. It's not like you can go see a coach or an instructor and they can teach you something, but if you don't practice it, you won't get anywhere. And one of the things that I say to people a lot, especially when you're newer, is not only using a coach of some sort, but going out with the purpose of trying to learn that day. So like my friends and I sometimes will go on a ride in a small area where it's like, let's go over to that rock roll and we'll do that thing like 15 times, you know, because normally if you just go out and you go on a mountain bike ride, like what a lot of people do, they're like, I just go on rides and then I'll get better. But those days when you go out and you just do that one line over and over again, and you really build the confidence, and you take the time to look at how things are set up, then it gets your brain in a spot where when you roll over the top of something and you need a quick reaction, you have a skill set that you've built, you know. And I think a lot of times people will go and they'll just try that, let's just say this rock roll one time, and then they're like, oh, I didn't get it, and maybe they'll try it one more time, and then they sort of get it, and then they're like, oh, I got it, and they just move on. But they didn't really build like that skill set, you know. And so the next, maybe they get it, maybe they don't. But when you go out there and you purposefully try something over and over, those days that we've done that, I always feel like, man, I walk away so much of a better rider.
Yeah, that is exactly this practice mindset is what I'm trying to bring into the world. And that is exactly why I have the home training courses with the step-by-step drills, because they give you a methodical order. Because practicing does help. Any type of practice you do does help. But it really helps if you do the right movements in the right order, and especially if you're focusing on a specific form. So if you're not just focusing on getting down that rock roll, but how you get down that rock roll, because then it will help for the next even steeper rock roll, because you've built the right movement patterns that will actually keep you safe. And that's why it's super amazing if you do that, if you session sections and if you repeat them. But if you repeat these with the right form, that is going to skyrocket your skills to then take it to even more technical sections, and so on. And that's exactly what I do with my home training courses, that I give my clients the structure so that they know what to practice, where to practice, how to practice, and then to send me in videos to get feedback. Because just as you said, that is the game changer, that you start getting into that practice mindset and not just ride mindset, because otherwise you'll just be repeating your old habits when you're out riding. You won't be improving them. You won't be changing them.
Yeah, I think for somebody, speaking of old habits, somebody like me that has been riding long enough that geometry has dramatically changed, that there's some habits that I notice, like especially people around my age, we tend to like get back way too far compared to like what's needed, you know, and the way that geometry of bikes are now, like getting low is just as good, or if not better, than some cases of getting back. And I would imagine that there's probably some things that you see a lot that people do. What are one of the most common things that you see, like a mistake that people are making?
As you said, like one of the most common mistakes is definitely body positioning. So either being way too far back, or nowadays having too much weight in your hands. So it's actually, I have a video about this, and I work according to a skills pyramid. So up here at the top of the skills pyramid are all the skills that people want to learn. But actually down here at the bottom are all the skills that the people need to learn, which is what everything else builds up on. And the bottom, like the bottom of the skills pyramid, the entire bottom is just body positioning, because everyone, even when I worked with a lady who I prepared for the Olympics, we will work on body positioning every week, because body positioning is the basis of everything. So the most common error is definitely body positioning, that people are too far rearward, too far forward, or just stiff in the bike.
How did they get too far forward? Because this is one of those things where it's like, I just don't think about it. So like, I don't understand, like, is their seat too high, or they just have their like,
they just put their weight in their hands. They don't stand on their feet,
more.
Especially when they're coming from toe clips, so clipless pedals. They will stand on their tiptoes, which puts their weight too much on their handlebar, and then their front wheel gets stuck and they go over the handlebars, for example.
Interesting.
So body weight too far forward with just too much weight in your hands. It also comes because in a lot of magazines, they keep saying, oh, this modern geometry needs to be ridden with more weight in your hands. It's not really more weight in your hands. It's just a tiny little hip shift that you need.
Yeah.
But again, we're at the point, these probably journalists writing this, they're not coaches. So how should they know? They're saying something that feels like them for them, but it's not actually weight in the hands. And so people will ride either, as I said, too far rearward or too far forward. And the next problem is the next most common error.
I do hear a lot of people talk about like, oh, you need to weight the front tire more so that you don't wash out. And in my mind, I'm always like, I don't know what you're talking about, because like, I don't feel like I'm pushing in my front tire any more than I ever have. And maybe I am slightly, but like, to me, it's, I always like, I'm like, okay, I'm not sure what you're talking about. I just nod and smile.
Yeah, that, for example, is something that I will work on with my clients a lot, like that they feel the difference, that they understand the difference, that they will feel right before they lose traction on their front tire, and how they can counteract it, how they need to position their body and what they can do. And the next common error, to come back to your question, is braking errors. I see people grabbing the brakes erratically, or just using far too much of their rear brake. And that doesn't only make them lose control of their bike, it also slows them down. And the problem is that most riders, especially advanced riders or riders who've been riding all their life, are like, I'm not going to work on body positioning and braking. Who does she think she is? And that's why they're losing. They're losing time and crash. And
what do you tell people? How do you tell people to brake to initially? Whenever I tell people, I always tell them just to pull both brakes like evenly, and get good at that and comfortable with that, and not afraid that your front brake is going to like make you like go over the bars. And then as you get better, you'll be able to understand like where to tweak that better. But I always just tell them that, like, to start, like, just think that they're like connected and you want to pull them both at the same time. Is that good advice or bad advice?
It's definitely a good place to start, because what I usually also say, it depends. If I'm having a designated braking session, it will look different. But as you said, if it's a quick tip you want to give someone, a beginner, then it's great to say what you say. said that they should engage both brakes at the same time, and they should engage both brakes in a way that none of their wheels start skidding. So if they are modulating the brakes and not grabbing them, but modulating them finely, feathering them, and using both brakes, and gently ease off the brakes when one of their wheels starts skidding, then they will start automatically using more of the front brake as they ride steeper, because as you may know, like the rear wheel will block straight away. So if you use both, and then you notice, okay, my rear wheel is skidding, so then they can ease off that rear brake gently, and then usually they also start using more of the front. But still,
I think using those words that you just used there like make a lot of sense though too, because I would just say pull your brakes, like where your descriptive words like modulating and gently, and like I could see how somebody who has no experience, they're just thinking, oh, you have to pull them until it's like, and that's how you do your brakes. And in my mind, I'm just saying, yeah, just pull them evenly, but I'm not saying like gently pull them. And, so yeah, it's always like such an eye opener to me. Like I said earlier, when I hear other people explain things, because I'm like, yeah, that's what I meant. It's definitely not what I said.
Yeah, it is funny. Like if you, as you said, if you just grow up with it, you don't think about these things, you just do them. And that's why exactly some of the best riders are the worst coaches, because they have no idea what they're doing.
I think a lot of people in braking as well really don't understand, especially like in that rock roll situation, like how hard you can pull your front brake and not go over the bars, and at the same time that you're doing that, how light you need to be pulling your back brake so that you're not losing that traction on the rear end. Because like you said, the rear end will break loose really fast, and as soon as it breaks loose, it starts swinging around to the side, and for somebody that maybe doesn't have the right experience, like you won't recover, so
exactly. That's why I will spend a lot of time with my riders working on braking and giving them braking drills, such as writing down a section only using your front brake. And that is a game changer, that people start trusting their front brake. And once you have that trust, that's when you start using it more. And that's when you start really gaining control. And those are the things that, if you don't have that methodical step-by-step progression to follow, are super hard to come up with yourself, because you just wouldn't think about them. But since it's my daily job, that's what I do with the courses I have online. And that's like the biggest difference. YouTube will never replace that, because on YouTube you don't have that methodical order. You can watch 10 videos or 100 videos, and they will be scattered all over the place. And of course it's going to be helpful, but you still don't have the ladder to climb, your plan to work with, to really improve methodically. And that's why I want to help as many people as possible, of course, by giving tips on YouTube. But the real progress will happen when people work with me with those courses and with my personal feedback. And that's the magic. That's what I love really doing, because I have so many clients that are aged 70 plus. My oldest client is 84, and they've been making amazing progress and finally feeling safe. And mountain biking is just so much more. Mountain biking is not just about the amazing 6 stunts, which are cool, but that's not all there is to mountain biking. For many people, it's just getting out, having a good time, getting their head space freed up, and enjoying nature. And it's great if the more skills you have, the more time you have to enjoy these things.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think going back to the rock roll scenario that I was talking about too, I was thinking that when people are in that scenario where their rear brake locks up and the back end swings around, I think what they instinctively do is let go of both their brakes, because they're like, oh, that brake is what's making me like screw up. So then they let go, but then because they let go, then they end up just too much speed into what they're doing. And if they get lucky, the suspension saves their life. And if they don't, more than likely, it just turns into like, it doesn't go well.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I meant. Like the most common error number 2 is braking errors, that people will be scared of their front brake and then brake erratically or brake too little, gain too much speed. And it's interconnected. Like body positioning errors are always interconnected with braking, because if you're too far rearward, of course, you're going to be scared of your front brake. So if you have that body positioning error, you can't even trust your front brake enough. Same thing, if you have too much weight in your hands and you grab too much of your front brake, you're going to fly over the handlebars. So you always need to look at the things, how they also work together. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, mountain biking is physics. You can either work with the laws of physics and have a good time and an easy time and use little strength, or you can work against the laws of physics and use a lot of strength. And
yeah, it's interesting, like you had mentioned earlier, where people say speed is your friend, and I think, you know, in some aspects I can understand when people say that, but in others, like what you were just talking about, as you're going through and you're learning those things, like just the ability to see that line, or the way that you handle yourself with your body positioning through things, actually makes them way easier. But as a beginner, you don't really have any point of reference. Like if I come into a rock garden, like I can now look at like the tops of these rocks and know that my wheel is actually not going to go in that hole in between them, because it's just like the line is going to be like peak to peak to peak over this, where somebody else maybe like they'll come in and they'll think, oh, I need to get into those cracks to kind of like make my way through this. And instead it's like, no, you need to straight line this, but also you need to be going fast enough that works. Otherwise your suspension compresses and whatever. But when you're a beginner, you don't really have a point of reference. So it's really hard to understand that, you know?
yeah, absolutely. And I think like the biggest problem with mountain biking is that people go into too technical terrain too early. So they just see it looks easy when someone else does it, so they're just going to try it, but they don't have the skills yet. And if you don't even have the skills to ride a single small rock roll, how are you going to ride a succession of rock rolls or a rock garden? But people just do it because that's how mountain biking is. And I think that's like one of the biggest problems with mountain biking. And that's something that I'm trying to create awareness with, also with my content, is that people notice they need to build the skill sets in an isolated fashion first, like on one rock roll, or even off the trails. That's even safer, on a curb, to build the movement patterns first. Then these movement patterns need to be refined by repetition. And then you can start taking them to the trails where movement patterns that have flaws will have negative consequences. But that's a problem. People don't have movement patterns. Of course, they're in complete random mode, and they attempt skills that they just don't have right on the trails where they will have negative consequences. And
I
that's
think
why people
when
crash
you
too
say
much.
movement pattern, the thing that comes to my mind the most is, I always feel like my skill set is what saves me when things go wrong. And it's like if I'm coming through a corner super fast and all of a sudden it's blown out and my front tire is like losing traction, like the way that my body knows how to move to regain control and like what I need to do, like it happens without thinking about it. And you definitely like you can't like watch a YouTube video and get that. Like you
No.
have to get that through like repetition
Repetition.
or yeah, you
Exactly.
know, and that's the stuff that I always think about, is like, how do you teach that moment? Because I don't know, you know, like in my mind, I'm just like reacting. I know
Yeah,
that whatever this
exactly.
thing that I need
Because,
to do, like
yeah,
how I need to move
exactly.
my body.
Yeah.
I at the same time I do that, I tap this brake and then I lean this way and then it'll pop up and I'll be fine. But I
Mm-hmm.
have zero clue how to explain what
Yeah.
I just did,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Because you learned it as a kid. So with you, it's saved in that automatic memory where you could just retrieve it. And an adult needs to build that automatic memory by repetition. So he needs to repeat those patterns in a safe environment first, over and over. Then he needs to start, or she or he needs to start increasing the consequence. And then she or he can apply it where she actually needs it. So then she'll go into a corner, or he, the rider, and suddenly something like that will happen. And then it'll be like, wow, how did I rescue that? And
Yeah.
that's when you notice that your skill practice has been showing results. And that's
So
exactly step-by-step practice. That's the answer.
yeah. So earlier you said you started mountain biking and you got in this like awful crash that like almost paralyzed you with fear. Why did you keep riding?
I kept riding because, for one thing, my friends were riding. I was, these were two friends I had just met, and I liked them a lot. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to lose them if I stop riding. So I really wanted to keep riding for them. And the other thing is that I really liked the being out in nature and exploring new trails. I used to run a lot before. So with running, you just have a very limited radius. And with mountain biking, I just had a larger radius and I was more in nature. And I really like I felt how much nature did me well or did me good. And that's why I wanted to keep mountain biking. But that's also why I noticed I cannot enjoy nature and I cannot enjoy being out there if I'm fearful all the time. So I had to get rid of the fear to enjoy nature. And that's why I started getting into the skills, because I noticed, okay, the only way I can get rid of my fear is if I actually know what to do if a crash like that happens again, or better yet, how I can avoid a crash like that. And that's why I started really practicing skills, and then started to learn skills in a way that I could actually teach them others as well.
Yeah. You said that you went to school in Heidelberg. Were you doing outdoor kind of activities in that area?
Yeah, I lived in Karlsruhe, which is about an hour from Heidelberg. And I was hiking a lot there and also riding my mountain bike. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I actually lived in Mannheim when I lived in Germany, so I'm very familiar with Heidelberg. Unfortunately, at that time of my life, I actually wasn't riding bike much, and I always think whenever I think back, I'm like, man, I really wish I would have taken advantage of that.
It's a great area, definitely. How long were you there for?
About 3 years. So yeah, I was in the military, so I was stationed in Mannheim, but yeah, we would go to Heidelberg all the time to like go party and stuff, and I had friends that went to school there and whatnot. So yeah, it was definitely
lots of Americans there. Yeah, definitely. And super amazing area to ride mountain bikes, to go hiking, and cute little city as well. So if you do visit Germany, whoever's watching out there, go. Heidelberg is definitely a cute little place to visit.
Yeah. A lot of people have probably seen Heidelberg in pictures of Germany and just don't know it, because they have a castle there that is it's very picturesque of the way that you would imagine a castle. And the city has it lit up in a specific way, so that like at night it just is like, it's very pretty. So you've probably seen it, so you should go see it in person.
Probably, yeah. And I went to university there for 3 years, and it's a cute little city with, as you said, a super active nightlife and lots of university students, lots of army people. So always something going on. Yeah.
Yeah. So where do you live now?
I live in Spain. I live at the Costa Blanca, which is between Valencia and Alicante. And I've been living here for 2 years now. And before that, I lived in Mallorca for 12 years. And I used to run a mountain bike guiding and coaching station in Mallorca with rental bikes. And I worked myself up. I started
Where's Mallorca? I don't even know where that is. Where's Mallorca?
Yeah. Mallorca is an island right next to Spain in the Mediterranean. And it's super popular. So, wow.
It's like a big mountain bike destination, like outdoor activity kind of destination.
It is super popular with road bikes. Like I think 250,000 road bikers go there every year. But mountain biking is a tiny little niche. So I opened a mountain bike station out of that reason, because it's super beautiful island, like really beautiful. And I offered mountain bike first guiding and then also coaching there. And I had, when COVID hit, I had about 70 rental bikes and 7 full-time employees working for me. Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a good mix for COVID.
Yeah, exactly. And then, well, I was lucky because Spain, they shut us down like completely. We weren't even allowed to leave the house for 12 weeks. But in Germany, everything was, we were really like locked at home. We were allowed to leave the house once a week to go shopping, grocery shopping, but that was it. There was military everywhere. We were really not allowed to leave the house for 12 weeks. And
we weren't supposed to leave, but me and all my friends like went mountain biking every day. We were like, this is sick.
Yeah. That would have been amazing. No, like that was the longest time I wasn't on my mountain bike, because we weren't allowed to leave the house. And then after like 8 weeks, we were allowed to leave, but only in the morning between 6 and 8 a.m. So this is me getting up at 5. It's like, I am allowed to leave the house to ride my bike at 6. Yeah, it's hilarious.
That's crazy.
But to come back to the story, the 7 full-time employees I had, obviously, the good thing, they wanted to do something. And in Germany, everything, and in Austria, it was summer and everything was more like open. So they were able to get jobs there, I was super lucky because I would have kept paying them, which of course would have been my ruin because it was locked down in Spain for over 17 months where we didn't have any income. And that's when I really started getting more into the online coaching. And that's something that we already started before, but that's of course when we really hit off the online coaching platform and we really started gaining more clients.
It's good that you had that, already you were building that. There's a guy locally that is was a pro rider that does training, like physical training, and he had just started building out his like online catalog right around that same time. And it was like, well, I can't have any people in the gym. This is like really good that I at least had that. And then he was able to lean into that. And it sounds like the same that you did. And ultimately then probably was like a gift instead of like something bad,
Yeah, definitely. A crisis, in my opinion, can always be a gift. It always depends on how we see it and what we make of it. And that was definitely COVID for us was the biggest gift because I was able to lean into the coaching even more. And before, since I still had the bike station with all the employees and all the rental, like the big rental fleet, I was doing the coaching almost in the same extent that I'm doing it now. But I just didn't have the headspace because I also had those employees and all the rental bikes to take care of. And that's why, like in retrospect now, I'm super grateful for that lockdown because it gave us the opportunity to really lean into the coaching and to help as many people as I am able to help now all over the world because of the online coaching. And that's why it always depends what you make of the situation, in my opinion. Like every crisis is an opportunity.
Yeah, it's interesting how that happens because I can think of that, in many times in my life. There was a time where I got laid off from a job, and it actually was like, when at the time you look at it like, oh my God, like this is horrible. What am I going to do? And then in after a little bit of time goes by, you look back at that time and you're like, man, I'm so grateful that happened because it made this and this and this fall into place. And so yeah, it's good that you have that perspective. Some people walk around and kick the can, and I think that doesn't really do anything for you.
No, definitely not. Yeah. So how much of what you do is content creation and how much is something else?
So my day job is I do IT stuff. So I'm like a IT project manager, but as far as content creation goes, then I have my regular channel that does like POV kind of stuff, like stories. I just like to call them stories. And then I have obviously this podcast as well. So it takes up a lot of time, definitely a lot more time than I think anybody realizes that's not a creator.
Yeah, definitely. It takes up so much time. It's
Yeah.
like content creation, especially if you want to do it at a specific level. Yeah, it's like almost all of my free time. Because I do it in my free
totally.
time. Yeah.
And it's, it's from the outside, it's very easy to be like, oh, you just get a camera and then you like put that on and you go like talk about whatever you did. And it's like, that's part of it. Yes. But I mean, just like the editing on its own is like, I mean, that's something that people go to college to learn how to do. You know what I mean? Most of us don't go to college to learn how to edit. We're just like learning it from watching YouTube,
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
There's that aspect of it. And then there's just, I think it's just at the end of the day, I was talking to Joe about this recently, just like it's that passion for creativity. I think that really drives me. And it doesn't, like when you really love doing something, it doesn't feel like it's work, like you just enjoy it. So you would do it anyway. Like there is zero reason, like financially, why I should be doing this. But I do, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, the extra money is nice, but it's definitely like if you put the amount of hours that I worked or have worked to get to where I'm at right now versus like how much money I've made in that amount of time, like you would be like, that's ridiculous. Like there's no, like, stop.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
No, same here. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like the content creation, I always notice because like a lot of people ask me, yeah, you put up a reel and then you must be checking all the time. How's it going? And sometimes I post a reel and then I like a day later, I should check how it actually performed. So it's not like I'm like, oh, how's this performing? I'm grateful for the interaction and the likes and everything, but I don't do it to get that. I genuinely do it because I'm like, I have this creative idea and I know, okay, this is really going to help people. And I would have loved to have this advice when I started, when I was struggling so much with the manual, so much with the bunny hop. And it's like, I'm so happy I finally cracked this code. I need to share it. But it's not that I say, okay, I want to have this to get like likes or anything. And I just try to put as few ads as possible on YouTube because I hate ads myself. So if it weren't for my patrons, I would never be able to do this. But as you said,
Patreon is definitely, Patreon and now members has definitely been the thing that like carries me like financially through it, because and not that like I really just spend all the money that I make on YouTube, probably more than what I make on YouTube, making more YouTube, you know?
Absolutely.
But if it wasn't for them like supporting me the way that they do, there probably would have been a point where I'm like, just financially, this doesn't make any sense for me to like just be dumping this money into, and like why? You know what I mean? Then I could just make content, like make one video every 6 months and it wouldn't matter, you know, and I wouldn't need to buy a $2,000 camera or, you know what I mean? Or some, you know, thing that does something to make the podcast easier, or, you know, but I don't remember where I was going with that, but anyways, it's definitely like, it's a lot of fun. It's definitely a lot of fun. And I feel like I really enjoy the community aspect of it as well. But I think at the core of it, it's just being creative for me, and I really enjoy that. So, I don't remember where I was going, but like you had mentioned, you know, people like posting things and then just letting it go. I can do that with my podcast. Like I will finish this up, I'll post it, and I forget. Like it'll be like once every 2 weeks, I'll be like, I should check the comments on that channel. But my stories, when I post my stories, like I'm very like interested to see how it goes, you know, and because I think there's so much more of my passion and my creativity into it. Like it means so much more to me to see, like, where I feel like the podcast to me is just like, I just feel like I'm having a fun time, like having conversations with people, and I don't feel like I'm like working, you know what I mean? It's just like, we just talked for a couple hours, like it was super easy. So but the stories, like I'm definitely like, oh man, it sucks whenever you put something up and it just doesn't do well, and you're like, but it's so good.
Yeah, same. Like I get the same sometimes, like when I post a tutorial that I've been working on for almost a year or something, and that I know, okay, this could help so many people, and this is like, I look at it, it's like, it's so on point. And then I see, for example, a tutorial about the same topic go online from some pro writer, but the tutorial itself, I know it's not helpful. It's just some, as you said, some pro writer saying, yeah, just do this, but it's get 1 million views in like 2 days. I'm like, why? That just doesn't even help anyone. And then of course I'll be like, why does mine only get, I don't know, a few thousand? And it's like, sometimes of course it's also, I can relate to that so much, what you said. It's like, but it's not only about the numbers for me. It's not like I want to get the 1 million views. It's about the thought that each and every view is a person that this may help. So for me, it's really about getting stuff out that I would love to have had when I started and when I was struggling. And every time I plan content and I think like, should I post this? I always think, okay, is this really coming from my heart or is it coming from my ego? Because sometimes I will have the temptation to post something to just show how cool I am. And then I will go have this filter and say, okay, is this my ego or is it my soul? And if I have that ego in there, then I don't post it. Even when the video is finished, I don't post it. I have this garbage bin with ego content and I put it in there. And that's really something that for me, why it also, as you said, it doesn't have to financially pay off, because only posting that content and knowing that even if it's only 3,000, think about it, 3,000 is a whole lot of people you can help. So that's something that we keep losing track of now with Instagram, or generally social media, and the huge numbers that you see something that hits 1 million and then you see another one that hits only 5,000. But then if we reduce it back to it and say 5,000 is a whole frigging lot of people that hopefully have gained something, have had value. And that's, I think we shouldn't forget that.
Yeah, I said that when my channel was around 5,000 subscribers. I remember like kind of being down about it at the time because it wasn't growing as fast as I wanted it to or whatever. And my daughter, I think, was in high school at that time. And I remember her saying like that's more people that's in my whole school. And their whole school is like a really big school for the area. And it was like, made me think about, like, yeah, when I go there, like all those kids walking all around and I'm like, there's a lot of people here. And then you go to maybe like a baseball game or something and you look and you're like, okay, that is a lot of people. And it's really hard to like keep that perspective.
Yeah, we lose that perspective with social media in many ways. And that's something that I keep reminding myself. Like, I remember when I hit 50K with my YouTube channel, which I never thought I would, because I genuinely just wanted to put this out to help people like myself. And I just said, okay, I'm going to help people. That's the goal. So when it started growing and when I hit 50K, I was like, darn. And my boyfriend was like, that's more people than people that live in my hometown. Yeah, it's like, just imagine that. And now it's like it's over 60K, and Instagram growing up 100K. I'm like, it's insane. Like, think about the number of people. One of my latest reels hit like over 10 million. It's like, that is insane. Like 10 million people. Think about that. And just because we've had that once, then sometimes the human brain functions that way. We start to compare everything, but we really shouldn't do that, because just because it worked once and just because it hit 10 million people once, even if the next one only hits 3,000, the 10 million are still there. They're not going anywhere. And the 3,000 is still a lot. Like, think about it. Even if it's only 500, think about 500 people. Like,
yeah, I mean, if you were in a room with 500 people and you were just talking to them, you would be like, man, there's a boatload of people in this room.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think we lose that perspective. And also when we get like hateful comments and everything, not like losing that perspective that there are people with real feelings behind that screen. And my wish is just to make social media a little more social again and to create that awareness for these things.
Your ego bin was interesting to me. In my mind, I was like, you should definitely post that all on Patreon, because I think those people they won't take it that way. And I think if you made the content, you should definitely share it. But it was interesting to hear your perspective there, because it's not like I don't think about things in that manner when I create at all. Like I think that, I just enjoy telling a story. So like before there was YouTube, like I would tell stories of things like when we're having a party or something, like I just enjoy that, like taking people on that ride. And so whenever I'm making my video, I'm like not really thinking about like, does this make me look cool, or does it like, sometimes it's a drag when you're like, dude, this section was like insane looking, and like you get it on camera and you're like, it looks like flat as a table. Like you're like,
I know.
Whatever.
I get that all the time. And then the people will be like, my grandma would ride that. And you're like, no, like either you have a super cool grandma or you have no idea how the section looks like.
Or then they get out there themselves. And then later they, like when you post that picture again on Instagram, they're like, oh my God, I went there and that was definitely not what I was expecting. And you're like, yeah, well, it's funny though, even as a creator, you still do that to yourself. Like I went to, Whistler recently for the first time, and it was things that I saw in person that even on video I was like, well, I'd probably do that, and then I got there in person and was like, there's no way in hell I'm gonna do that, because it just like the camera is so deceiving.
Yeah, it flattens out everything. It really is. It's like, yes, very deceiving, definitely, and it's super hard to kind of make it look as though, as you said, half as dangerous in quote unquote as it really is.
How do you so I mean, that has to be a struggle for you for the content that you're making, to like make people like, hey, I'm on this corner, I want to show you this like steep corner, to how you would like maneuver your body and your brakes through this. But if it doesn't look steep, then to somebody, then they're gonna maybe discount the video and not like think you know what you're doing, or like it's worth watching. So
It
how do you
happens.
create with that?
Yeah, of course, camera angle and placing the camera in a way that it kind of shows is something that we do think about a lot as well, but sometimes it just won't show. So generally, that's like the big life lesson I learned with creating, is letting go of people's judgments, like
Yeah.
really knowing that whatever you do, you will always get super crazy comments. Like the other day, I got this amazing comment. It was actually a podcast I made about misogyny and about people patronizing men, patronizing women. And the comment was like, just better stick to skills, stop this pseudo feministic shit. And I was like, okay, this is about men patronizing women, and you're patronizing me, you know, like it's like, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
And they don't even notice. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and it's
The internet is definitely interesting. I've noticed a lot of times that people make comments that I don't think that they realize they're being an asshole.
and
You
they
know?
don't even realize that they're insulting themselves, not even the creator, because like
Yeah.
no friendly happy person would ever write that, and
Yeah.
no super intelligent happy person who has the ability to self-reflect would treat another person like that. So they're not insulting you or me, they're insulting themselves, and they're just showing that they're a super unhappy person by posting something like that. And I
Yeah.
think that's the big life lesson that I learned, and that I was really able to also just laugh at these comments and not take them personal, because I know that it's nothing to do with me. And
Yeah.
that's something that I struggle a lot with, especially before I started the channel, because I've been wanting to start a channel for many years, but I always said, no, I don't want this, because to get a lot of views, you need to post juicy content, or like content that they will make fun of you. And I don't want to be that kind of person. I want to post professional content. And if you post professional content, being a woman, you're just going to get a lot of misogynistic things and mansplaining, and you are going to get a lot of very diminishing comments. Am I ready for it? So that's something that I was, do I really want to do this? And then I decided, okay, no, I'm going to do this, because the comments don't say anything about me. And from year to year, I've been getting better and better at it, and laughing at a lot of comments more than actually taking any of them personal. But it's outrageous. Like, it is a funny place. As you said, internet is amazing.
I fortunately I didn't have to like learn that. I don't know why, like what it was in my personality set, that maybe I'm just confident in myself. And I think I've always just had that perspective of like, if somebody doesn't like me, I don't really give a fuck, you know? And so like on the internet, and maybe it comes also from doing IT. I've had a long history with the internet and comment sections and people being dipshits. And so like, to me, like there's so many like physical people that I know that were just trolls. Like they just did it to like get people mad. So in my mind, whenever I would see that, I could just like picture those people, and I'd be like, this is like David just trying to piss people off, you know, like, okay, I'll play. Or I'd be like, I don't even care, you know? And
but
so
I mean,
really,
why do these people do it if you actually know them in person? Because I don't think I've ever met anyone in person who does all that internet trolling. Like, what does
yeah.
it give them?
I think they just enjoy like getting people agitated or like excited to like see how many people they can affect, you know, Like I can say this and see how many people it just I don't know. I never asked the question, to tell you the truth. But I think, you know, it is definitely I feel fortunate that I do feel the way that I do, and I will say that it's not like I'm immune to it, but there are every once in a while. For me, maybe it's once a year that somebody says something that like catches me on the wrong day, and I'm like, that really, like, I'm thinking about it, and then it'll be later in the day where I'm like, dude, do you want to give this like mental mind space? Like, do you want to give them this piece of your brain right now? And it's usually like I walk through that and I'm like, no, I don't give it. This doesn't matter. Like, why would I care? You know, and I let that go. But I think that, you know, it's definitely tough for a lot of people when they first start creating content. And I can only imagine the difference of actually of being a woman as well, that the level of filter that people have for their inside voice to their outside voice on the internet is there's not much of a filter, you know. And I think that on the internet, especially towards women, a lot of men, like, they use that they use that in the wrong way, and it's unfortunate. It makes me wonder if that's the reason that you don't see as many women content creators that you were talking about earlier, you know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the mountain biking world is still pretty male dominated. Like, also, if I look at the stats, I mean, on Instagram, I have about 40% female, which is a lot. But on YouTube, I think it's still between 85 and 90% male subscribers and watches. So it is still a very male dominated sport, which I am also trying to change a little by just inspiring women that it doesn't have to be dangerous and it doesn't have to be scary. And mountain biking is not all about just hucking and praying.
Right.
But maybe it's also about that. But I think that's also a reason why I do it, to just show that what they say doesn't say anything about us. And like, the more men want us to be like to shush, the louder we need to show how competent we are. It doesn't mean that I'm a feminist. No, I wouldn't consider myself a feminist at all. But I think that it is time that we show that we are just as competent, and that we are confident as well, and that we can say no, and that we don't need to be okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, like, I just judge people by who they are and their character. Like their sex doesn't really matter to me, you know. Like, I like, show me you're a good person, and then I'm that's what I'm going to judge you on. I don't like start out with some kind of like notion that, you know, oh, that's a woman, she's not going to know what she's talking about, or because I've learned so many things from women, you know what I mean? So, like, just as many things from women as I have from men. So it's not like in my life experience, it's not like, oh, well, only every once in a while one will tell me something that's, you know what I mean? It's like, really? You know, it doesn't even make sense to me that people would think that way. But I think it's awesome every time I see a female creator doing well in the mountain bike space, because I think that other women really need that support to feel welcome, because it is such a male dominated sport, you know. And it's not, I don't think that most people that ride want it to be like, most men don't, I don't think they want it to be a male dominated sport, like, but there's definitely a fear factor to it, you know, for women to come into like that boys club, you know.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons is, as I said in the beginning, the bro tips that don't help women. And mountain biking, especially if you are riding your mountain bike with a lot of strength and you have the male strength, then for you it works. But for us women, we don't have the physical strength, so we need to be riding our bike differently. And if then, like, these tips such as speed as your friend or just go fast and pull up, they're not going to help us because they just don't work for us women. And men will get away with having less skills for much longer because they have so much physical strength. So they can just hold on to their bike. And if they have a lot of travel, they will survive for most trails, especially if they're well manicured trails that like are very common in the US. They can get down many trails. They can even jump and land and not jump very well and land, and with physical strength they can get away with it. But we women, we will not be able to. And that's, I think, also a reason why when a lot of men take their women on too hard trails and then give them these tips, that it doesn't work. And that's why I think there's need for a different type of tutoring or mentoring for women, that they need to notice, okay, this sport can be a lot of fun if I just do it the way I like it, if I take my time, if I learn the skills safely, and if I then progress safely, then I can feel safe and it doesn't have to be scary. And that's something that I'm trying to bring into the world. And no matter how old you are, you can start with mountain biking and feel safe, and you don't need to crash. It doesn't have to be about crashing. Yeah.
I think going back to what you said at the very beginning, I've recently got a e-bike, and that bike just being heavier, the way that it handles through tech, in my mind, I'm like, it really makes tech like easier, like so much easier, where trails that I would feel more challenged on, like on my e-bike, I'm like, oh man, I'm just smashed right through. It's like, this is great. And then I put that into perspective of what you said at the beginning about trying to teach skills to people who are smaller. Like you said, you know, you're around 100 pounds. I'm like 240 pounds. Like I'm more than almost 2.5 of you. So thinking about the way that just that 25 pounds feels on an e-bike, that 25 extra pounds on the e-bike, compared to like somebody that's like a third of the size of me. Oh my God, that just like the way that you ride through tech and stuff like that, the way that your suspension reacts, and the way that, like, in my mind, to just think about that I can't even imagine how it feels to ride a bike, somebody that weighs 100 pounds, because like it just doesn't make sense, you know, to me.
Same here. Like, I cannot imagine how light the bike must be for you. It must be like me riding a road bike as a mountain bike, or like even less. Like if you just like calculate, I did that once. I just compared with a guy who was double my weight. And if you just think about it, that like comparatively, the bike would weigh about 40 kilogram to make it feel about the way it feels for me, which is I think about 90 pounds or something. So think about that, like a bike with that weight, you wouldn't want to ride that. And that is how it feels like, for us all the time.
Your body weight. So like, let's say you said like you're around 100 pounds. So if you had a 35-pound bike, which most enduro bikes are, I mean, that's 35% of your body weight. Like
exactly. And now translate that to your weight.
Yeah. So like,
and would you
me,
be
like,
wanting to bunny hop that?
Right.
You know?
If I was pulling around a 90-pound bike, like, oh my God, I don't even know if I would want to ride bikes. Like, that just sounds horrible.
Exactly. And that's something that a lot of people forget. I mean, we're pedaling that uphill. We're trying to bunny hop it. We're trying to lift the front wheel, the rear wheel and stuff. And guys are like, yeah, just pull up. And it's like, no, I can't.
Now I feel like a jerk. That's hilarious. Yeah, it's like things that you just really like. I think that perspective that you're bringing to the table is really unique, you know, and it's really, really good to see like the content that you're putting out, and also that your channel is doing well. So, I mean, what does that tell you? Like, even whenever you say on YouTube that you're still 90% male audience, it shows that you're doing something right if you have 60,000 subscribers.
Yeah,
you know,
and
90% of them are men.
I know. That's why every time I look at the stats, I'm like, are these women signed up as men? Because it doesn't make sense. Like, why don't the women subscribe? So if you're a woman, please subscribe. I need more women. Because it's really, every time I look at it, it's like, this is crazy. Like, wow. But yeah, then again, the comments are also mostly men, which is great, as you said, because it is showing that there are more men out there that are open for a female perspective and open for a different perspective. And also, if I look at the stats, I will see that I have a rather older people subscribing to my channel. But still, I'm always super surprised about the amount of men, and very grateful for each and every one of them. But I need more
Yeah.
women.
Yeah. It makes you wonder. Like, I feel like this generation that's probably in their like teens to early 20s right now is probably going to be like, you'll see those demographics move more, because I feel like in general there's probably more men actually watching YouTube, like, as a platform,
Yeah.
than there is women. And I think that has to do with, whatever societal things that cause that. But I think with the younger generation, you're starting to see that. Like, when I was a kid, like, basically guys played video games and there was no girls playing video games.
Yeah.
And if you go onto like gaming channels and stuff like that now, you're seeing a lot more of a mix. And so women are doing that. Like my wife, for example, doesn't really watch YouTube. And I think that, like, I don't know why, as a guy, like, it was something that I was willing to watch or get into, but I think there has to be something like societally based, or like why it leaned that way initially. But I really do believe that that's changing.
Probably, yeah. That's also something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. And what I also notice is that, like, the non-subscribers are more female. So probably women don't even have a YouTube account. So then they can't even subscribe. So that might be one reason. But still, I same thing. I wondered the same. Like, why don't women watch as much YouTube?
Yeah. And I had a conversation with my wife recently. She loves cooking, and that's like, she likes cooking as much as I like riding bikes, so like I can relate with how much she enjoys it that way. Like, she could get up in the morning and eat breakfast and watch a cooking show. And to me, I'm like, why would you want to watch some other food while you're already eating? But I asked her, like, why don't you watch YouTube? Because there's like a million like YouTube like cooking creative like channels that are just as good as the ones that you watch on television. And she's just like, yeah, I don't know. I just don't like, it doesn't, like, for whatever reason, it doesn't even seem like a place for her to go,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Maybe
It's
I'll
very
I'll look into that. Maybe I'll find some science to it.
right.
But,
Right. So what kind of riding do you like to do for fun?
I would say, like, when people ask me, it's usually, I love, here in Europe, the riding is very different. We usually ride hiking trails, so it's very technical. The region where we are here is super rocky, super gnarly, loose, off camber, and exposed hiking trails. That's what I like doing. And I enjoy my e-bike a lot here as well, because we have very technical climbs as well. And I've been enjoying the e-bike because of the technical climbs, because with like my normal bike, I wouldn't enjoy them that much. And I wouldn't even attempt some of them because they're so steep and so long and so gnarly that I just wouldn't have the strength. And that's why I love my e-bike here and riding these technical trails. So I don't know if there's actually, we call it all mountain here in Europe. I don't know how you call it in the US, that type of riding.
Right on. Do you find that the e-bike like really boosted your confidence as far as like your riding ability? Or because I have a friend that his wife, when she got her e-bike, like, it changed her like jumping like dramatically. Like, and all of a sudden she was able to like hit a 35-foot table instead of before she was having problems with it. And I didn't know if it was like just the speed, or like, I think what she said too, just the way that it was weighted in the air, it was like easier for her.
Yeah, like, definitely most e-bikes nowadays are amazingly, especially like weighted for jumping, as you said. And also, like, I'm super grateful because I have a Lapierre bike, which has I think it's actually the lowest center of gravity all e-bikes in the world have, because they still have an external battery, and the motor itself is very low. So actually the whole bike has a super, super, super low center of gravity and is very short, which makes it amazing to maneuver. And it does also help with confidence, or with, as you said, it just sticks to the trail. So it does help with confidence on technical trails. However, and here we are back to the weight topic, the bike weighs about 25 kilograms. So think about, that's like a quarter of my weight now. So think about how heavy like that e-bike. No, it's half of my weight, half of
Yeah, I
my
was gonna
body
say
weight.
that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was like, wait a minute, that's off a little
exactly.
bit.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, that's wrong. That doesn't
Yeah.
sound right. I'm not 200 pounds. No, not yet. No. So it's half of my body weight. And think of that, maneuvering that when it's very steep and very loose, you do feel it, that the bike is pushing more. And
Hmm.
especially for bunny hops, bump jumps. I'm a super playful rider. I love nose pivot turns and placing my wheels like trial style. And that is
Hmm.
a lot harder with the e-bike. So it has
Hmm.
ups and down, like upsides and downsides, like almost everything in life. But I love the way it performs and allows me to ride uphill, like the technical aspect of it.
Hmm.
But and it does help with chunky downhill section if they're not too steep and jumping like built jumps, but it makes anything jumping where I need to jump with my own power harder. So it adds a little in some aspects, but overall I would say it
Yeah,
balances
there's
out.
there's parts of it where like for somebody smaller that I can see like the advantage of having like all that extra wattage at your disposal. Yeah, like where me like the amount of watts compared to like how heavy my bike is like the differential is not the same, you know? So like I can see that like having that extra output, like how much better that would be. But on the other hand, like when I like, and I'm assuming that your skill set is very good because you're a coach and you've been riding for a while and you know what you're doing. So you're a very active rider, right? So when you go out and you're riding that punchy like stuff fast, I at 240 pounds get done with an e-bike ride and my shoulders feel worked because I'm just like, you know, just moving this bike like this and pulling it up and slamming it that way and not in a way that my analog bike makes me feel. And I that side for like somebody your size, like to be thrown because the bike weighs the same. Your bike weighs the same as my bike.
Yeah.
You know, like this, even though mine's extra large, it's not much different, you know. So like I don't like I can only like that has to be very difficult. Do you have like some training that you've given to people like in that aspect that try to address that or
Yeah. It definitely is like, especially for women, core muscles are super important. And as you said, upper body muscles will really help you. So I always try, especially women or lighter riders, and or also I'd say petite men, men that are
yeah,
not super strongly built, to say if you want to ride strong or fast and technical things with more confidence and control, you will need to build muscle as well. Yeah, definitely. And what I do a lot is I do a lot of push-ups, pull-ups. I'm a super strong woman for my size and my weight because I know I need it when I'm moving my e-bike on technical trails. So I just, like a week ago, I rode a race, and here you can ride in the e-bike category. So there's the race is either you have an on e-bike and an e-bike category. And I noticed that I would have never been able to place as well as I did. I overtook like 90% of the men if I didn't have that physical strength. Because as I
yeah.
said, the bike weighs half of my weight. So just being able to keep that, as you said, move that bike around the way I normally move a normal bike
Right.
requires so much more strength in the muscles that you don't usually need as a mountain biker.
Yeah, it's very interesting, you know, like I said, I mean, it's I can definitely tell that difference in myself and I'm a pretty physically strong guy, you know, like I
Yeah.
go to the gym and I, you know, like I'm just a bigger guy. So like to move that around, it's crazy how much like how I feel that fatigue, you know,
Yeah.
all the when I ride my e-bike, none of the muscles that get sore normally get sore.
Yeah.
So it's like things that like that I noticed like maybe my calves like will get more like
Yeah.
work when I'm on the e-bike because of the way of like pushing that weight around, you know, like and it's just because it's just so much more and it's minusculely more, you know, on like in the scope of things. It's like, what does my e-bike weigh? Maybe 45 pounds compared to my 36-pound enduro bike. But yeah, it's really crazy. What I want to ask you though, while we're talking about smaller size people, I see a lot of people recommend like 27.5 bikes to shorter people rather than 29ers. And I think there was a point in time where that made a lot of sense. But then now the way that they really like re-engineered 29er bikes a lot better. Do you feel like the smaller wheel size is still good for a shorter person, or do you lean people to one way or another?
Well, definitely mullet. So having a 27.5 in the rear is super safety relevant for shorter riders, because for one thing, if you want to dismount and you dismount to the rear of the bike, if you have a 28-inch inseam and the bike is 29-inch, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. The next thing is drops, for example. I just published a reel about that a few weeks ago, where I did the same technique as my partner, and I basically shaved my pubic space on the rear tire, because you just have, like, if you have a 29-inch rear wheel and you just have this much space, how are you going to use it? So if you just use that range of motion, you are going to shave yourself. And that's why generally, for safety reasons, I would recommend, if you are below 5'3", 5'4", which is about 165 centimeters, I would recommend getting a mullet. So 27.5 in the rear, or even 27.5. But as you said,
I would recommend a mullet at 6'2", just because it's more fun.
Exactly. Yeah. So the mullet is definitely something that has helped me a lot to be able to bunny hop higher, to drop with more confidence, with more safety, and to feel and be safer when it's very steep and technical. And that's why I would definitely recommend a 27.5-inch rear wheel to shorter riders, and just shorter women or shorter riders in general. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Earlier, you were saying about how you like to like nose pivot and stuff like that in a trials manner. Do you do trials type of riding or training at all, or is it just something that you're?
No, I don't do trials like with a trials bike, but I do trials with a mountain bike. So I just like playing with my bike, because I think the more skills you have, the more fun you can have, and the more tools you have in your toolbox, the bigger the chance that you can find the right tool. And all these skills are ideal for winter. So I always tell people winter is the best time to train your skills. And it's actually the time where I get the busiest, because people book me the most, because winter is perfect to practice, because you don't need a lot of space to practice. And these trial skills will really improve your riding in so many aspects. And that's why I like doing them. And they're just so much fun.
Yeah. They always feel like those type of things. You feel cool when you do it, you know? So like, that's funny. Shoot, I forgot what I was going to say. What do you do ever like trail videos, like something where you're actually riding more on a trail than just like a tutorial, or is your channel all tutorials?
No. I do have, like, sometimes last year when I was racing, for example, I took people along on the race, or sometimes I do talk about trails, but that's something that I do more on my Patreon channel. So on my Patreon channel, I will share, for one thing, more private things, because I mean, those are the people that make all this possible. So I have immense gratitude for them. So on my Patreon channel, I will share more behind the scenes and more when I'm exploring new trails, for example. But on my YouTube channel, I also have some, I would say, spot checks or trail videos where I take people on trails. And sometimes I will usually also give tips about the sections, but it's not only tutorials.
Yeah. It's interesting, because like, I think, you know, you do what you're passionate about, you know, like some people are very good at doing like a training thing like you. Some people are very good at reviewing products, you know, and talking about them and how they feel to them, and some people tell stories, you know. And I think it's interesting to see like what what is interesting to you and like how your perspective on that creative process is so different than mine, you know, than
Yeah.
what like,
It's
because
actually
I
funny
would
because
imagine like your
I
workflow is
don't,
probably really thought out. Like you very
yeah.
pre-plan what you're doing. And for me, I'm like, oh, I just went on a trip and I filmed the shit out of everything, and then I figure out the story later, you
No, like
know?
I will literally think about a tutorial for months and then jot down ideas, plan it through, think about how I can, as I said, not how I can get the most views, but how the tutorial will be the most helpful for the watcher. And then I will go out and film it, and then I will edit it, and then maybe publish it, or it will go in the ego bin. But um
I want to
still,
see the ego bin. I'm really excited about the ego bin.
maybe one day I'm gonna sell it for a lot of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. You can just make another channel like Roxy's ego bin
Yeah,
and just post
exactly.
there and see how that does.
Yeah. See, well, seeing how the world is developing, it's probably going to do really well. But,
That's funny.
um, but what now I forgot what I was going to say. I was
I'm
going to
sorry.
say something. I forgot.
I'm
It'll
really,
come back.
it'll come back. It'll definitely come back. What do you like? Have you ridden much in the US?
I've just been to the US twice. That once was near Bellingham, so up
Oh, okay.
Washington, Bellingham, and Canada, BC, definitely. And 2 years ago, Las Vegas, because we had an instructor trainer meeting. So I train other instructors for the
Hmm.
BICP, and we had like a conference where all the instructor trainers met. So that's why I went to Las Vegas for a few days. And then we also went to Arizona and to Sedona and checked
Oh,
that
nice.
out. Yeah, that was
Did
fun.
you ride in Vegas when you were there?
No, we just spent a week there with all the instructors
Yeah.
on like a pump track and on
Yeah.
jumps. That's
Oh,
it.
that's fun.
Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody the other day about riding down there because I had seen a few videos of people riding in that
Yeah.
area. So I was wondering what your perspective was. How did you like Sedona?
It was fun, definitely really beautiful, like scenery wise. It's just
Yeah.
for me personally, it was too touristic. I don't like super crowded places,
Hmm.
and the riding was super flowy. I was expecting it to be much more technical,
Hmm.
so I was like, wow, this is fun, and I love the scenery. It was beautiful, like Hangover Trail and all that. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah. I always tell people when you're in Sedona, it looks like a postcard every direction that you look.
Hmm.
You're like, oh, it looks like a postcard. It's just so picturesque there.
Yeah.
Uh, but where are the popular places to go like in Europe that people, like here, it would be really easy for somebody to say like Sedona or Bellingham or
Mm.
maybe.
Well, it is hard because Europe has so many different places. I think Spain, well, I love Spain, and I think Spain is one of the most underrated riding destinations. And there's so much in Spain, like all sort of riding. We even have an area that looks like Moab. So Spain is like probably the most underrated riding destination in Europe. And apart from that, Austria has, and the Alps generally, France, there are a lot of riding spots in general, but I couldn't pinpoint and I couldn't say like that is the most popular or that's the place you need to go. It always depends on what kind of riding the person does. And then I would probably recommend something. But I would just definitely recommend if you are a mountain biker and come to Europe, bring 4 to 6 weeks and rent a van and travel through Europe because everything is pretty close if you compare it to the US. And still, there's so many riding opportunities.
Yeah, I know BKXE speaks really highly of Spain, and Joe I know also in person, and he went recently, and just the riding that he had in his videos just looked phenomenal and so much fun. But you mentioned Austria, and it really, I skied Austria when I lived there, and it was just mind blowing the way, like how vast like the networks were, like how big they were compared to what we have in the States. So I could only imagine riding there. Is there a lot of those ski resorts there? Have they switched to having
Yeah,
mountain bike trails as well? So
exactly. Yeah, that's something that has been coming a lot in the last years. So a lot of the ski resorts now are bike parks in summer. So they use the lifts, the gondolas for bikes in summer. And that's something that has really been coming a lot. I'm not a big fan of the manicured bike parks. I'm more the fan of, as I said, technical hiking tracks, because I usually don't like seeing so many people in one space.
Yeah.
And I enjoy riding technical, challenging trails. I do ride fast, but it's not about riding them fast. It's more about really riding sections and clearing sections in a, let's say, fluid way that I enjoy. And that's why I
Yeah.
enjoy practicing trails so much, practicing skills so much, because it opens up new trail possibilities for me. And the other, like the bike parks, are more the fun comes with riding fast. And that also increases the risk. And since I don't want to get hurt, because then I can't work as a coach, I usually have like this risk reward system more
Mm-hmm.
towards, I'm more about the risks and not so much about the reward.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. It's also like a different perspective than me. I am editing a video of me in Whistler right now, and like spoiler, like I really don't like riding park. Like I it's fun. Like it's not that it's not fun, but I think the things that I really like about mountain biking have more to do with the adventure of being out. And I don't have that sense of adventure at all at a bike
Mm,
park. Maybe when you very first get there, there's like, I did this trail for the very first time, and it's kind of an adventure because you don't know what you're expecting. But maybe because the risk isn't as high as like what I feel like is as high when I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and like if we get hurt, like somebody's gonna have to like hike the other person out,
yeah.
or they're gonna have to get a helicopter to come get us. Like that to me is like, or the fact that I climbed to the top of this mountain and I know this year maybe only 200 people have done this. Like, like that to me is like, wow, this is very fulfilling. And
Yeah.
when I'm at the bike park, it's just like, go up, go down, and then smash a bunch of beers and you're done, So
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Same with me. With me, it's about the being in nature.
mhm,
As I said, really being in control of my bike and being able to enjoy nature. And as you said, exploring areas where not many people get to. And in bike parks, it kind of feels like Disneyland. It's cool, but
mhm.
I don't want to go there like every weekend.
Yeah. I definitely like, I will say, Whistler definitely opened my eyes to a bike park that is not necessarily so like jump oriented. Like it
Mm,
seems like most bike parks are, or at least some of the ones that I've been to are like more like, hey, it's predominantly like go fast, rip these turns, and then hit these
yeah.
tables or these gap or whatever, these jumps. And and it feels like that's really what they're kind of like catered towards. But at least in Whistler, there's so much tech there too that you can kind of scratch that itch as well.
Yeah,
But
definitely
realistic,
especially around Whistler. Like
yeah.
we went to Whistler a few years ago, and I really enjoyed the trails outside of the park because they were so technical and
Hmm.
because they were so like diverse, so different. Yeah.
Hmm. Where in Spain would you recommend somebody to go if they were to come to ride Spain?
Hmm. There's many different areas. One's called Enduroland, for example. Then there's a little area called Iguerelas, and here at the Costa Blanca is also really amazing. So Costa Blanca between Alicante and Valencia, as I said. Then Teruel is another area. I've never been to ride there, but around Barcelona, there's also amazing trails, and Madrid. So they're like the things that come to mind right now. We do have parks in Spain for those who like bike parks, but I think the main or the best part about Spain is all these natural hiking tracks. The only
Yeah.
downside is it's kind of hard to find them, so I always recommend getting a local guide.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's interesting. I never went to Spain when I lived in Europe. It just didn't work out that way. And I would love to visit. It just looks really, really fun. And just the views that are on some of those trails that like BKXE did or like Colorado Kid, like just unbelievable. It's just really picturesque and beautiful. You're fortunate to live there. What brought you to Spain?
Well, Mallorca back then, I moved to Mallorca 2008, I think, was because I started and I wanted to work in the mountain biking industry. So I started riding and I wanted to work in the mountain biking industry, and there was a job opening there. So I just gave everything up and moved there. Yeah. And then like half a year later, I opened my own bike station. So that's why I moved there. And
when you say bike station, you mean like for the rentals and the stuff that
exactly.
you're talking? Okay.
Yeah, the rental station. Yeah, that's why what I opened there. That was actually more than a year later. So 2011, I opened that, and I stayed because it's a super, I would say, easy place to live. People are easygoing. It is civilized country. It's a very safe country, and cost of living is low. So that's what I like about Spain. People are super friendly, super open, super positive, focused on positive, and not as, because my mom is German and I lived in Germany for a total of 6 years, and Germans are very, I would say, focused on how can we optimize things, which has its upsides, but often it's kind of negative, like focused on the negative more than the Spanish people who are focused on the positive, which also has its downsides because obviously they don't get things done as well as Germans do. But yeah, it's kind of a very positive living atmosphere here.
Yeah, 100%. What do you want to do with the channel at this point? I mean, you feel like it seems like you've caught your stride, like you're building a huge audience. Like where do you see it going?
I just want to keep the same vibe going, like as in focus on the learning experience versus the entertainment. So I just hope I can maintain my ego bin and maintain making the content that I think will really help people and really focus on that. And I think that it'll work, because the good thing is that I've never done or followed the typical, let's call it, rules of post every week, post this, do that, and still the channel grew this big. So I think that people are starting to value exactly this authenticity and exactly this value-oriented philosophy that I have. So I just want to stick to that. I just want to keep going. I have a few tutorials planned out for the next years already, and a few topics that I think are really going to be helpful, and that I've not been publishing because I really wanted to think them through, because the risk of injury is very high with them, such as drops and jumps. And those are the things that we're going to publish in the next years, but in a different and very, let's say, safety focused way, especially for adults learning these skills. So that's my main focus, really tailoring my content to people who are learning it as an adult and not as a youngster or as a kid.
You said we. Who else is working with you on the channel?
We are 2 people doing everything. So my partner and me. And my partner, he's my life partner, but also my business partner. And we do everything together. So he's my cameraman, but also sometimes my stuntman. And we talk about the things together. We try out a lot of things, and we reverse engineer a lot of things. So before we bring out any type of content, we will always analyze probably hundreds of both amateur riders and pro riders and look at what they're doing, what they all have in common, and how we can then adapt this to people that are learning this as an adult without the body of a pro coach, of a pro athlete.
Does he do any of the editing and that kind of stuff, or?
Yeah, we do both of it together, kind of. We don't really have, a lot of people ask that, like, do you have completely different areas of work? I will do more of the writing because I enjoy writing, as in scripting and editing, and also for the online lessons, like the text below the lessons, that's mostly me because I just enjoy letters. And he will do more of the creative, like thumbnails and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. That's more his thing. But everything else, it's kind of 50-50.
Yeah. It's very interesting to hear like how you would do that. Like for me, like everything is just me. So it's one of those things I always think about, like, if the channel got to a spot where I needed help, like how would I do that? Because it's at least like what I feel like I'm doing is very personal. So it's like, how would I have somebody to help me to do that? Like the easy thing would be like, well, camera work would be great, because then you can like get other angles and not have to be like walking up and down the hill and carrying all this other stuff. But like, I was asking if he did the editing too, because like when you do the editing and things of that nature, it definitely changes the way that you think about creating the story. Because then you are thinking about the camera angles, or how you're going to transition, or like, well, you just took like 5 minutes to explain this thing. Like, we need to be able to make that interesting. Like, otherwise, like, and so that's good that he does that as well, because then you can have that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. But since we do plan out most of our videos before, and also spend a lot of time researching and thinking how we can get it as short as possible and make it on point as possible, we usually do a lot of the editing before, because we will see, okay, is this really relevant for our client? And is it, well, and I'm saying client because I'm thinking of as in coaching client. For me, it's not only watchers. It's like with YouTube, we also, of course, want to attract the perfect person we actually want to work with, because at the end of the day, what many people keep forgetting is that only because you're getting paid to do something, it shouldn't be something that you don't like doing. And we're super grateful and super lucky that until now, all the people we've worked with, all our students, have been lovely human beings. And that's because I think we are very clear about who we want to attract and who we don't.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We're just about at 2 hours, and I always like to ask people, what like YouTube channels do you like to watch, even if it has nothing to do with mountain biking?
That's a great question. I watch too many different things to really pinpoint it. It will be about personal growth, psychology, neuroscience. So very actually off mountain bike topic. Yeah. That's most of the things that I will watch.
my feed is very confused, and so the algorithm like feels like it gets me, and then it's like next week I'm on to something else, and then it's like, wait a minute, I thought you liked this stuff.
I know. I really confuse my algorithm a lot, but I do it intentionally sometimes to avoid getting into a rut, because we keep forgetting that social media and everything that we consume is based on that algorithm. So I try to really confuse it intentionally in order to get new impulses, because that way sometimes I have video recommendations where I'm like, oh wow, I would have never ever looked for this. And I think if we keep watching the same things, if we get into that rut, the algorithm will keep presenting us the same things. And I think that's definitely something that can help.
The algorithm is pretty interesting in terms of like how it does, like, provides you the content that you're looking for. But I always find it interesting that, I mean, I don't really know more than like 3 or 4 people in Europe that are creating content. So like, I don't get shown that content at all. I would imagine.
I think because they don't, probably because they don't create content in English. Like most other European mountain bike content creators I know will create in their language, which is Spanish or German. So those are some of the content creators that I will occasionally look at, and they are always in their mother tongue. And that's why, I mean, English isn't my mother tongue, but I decided when I started creating content, I said I want to do it in German and in English, because I want to be able to reach people all over the world.
Yeah, I noticed that on your channel, that you'll have both videos like the same thumbnail, except for this one is like in German and this one is in English.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So then that's like twice the filming that you have to do, because it's not like you're like subtitling it. You're filming it the exact same thing again in another language.
Correct.
That's
Exactly.
gonna be difficult to like, because sometimes there's like differences in how you explain things. So like, I wonder what it would be like to watch them both and see how different they feel. Maybe.
Yeah, that's
You
the
know?
funny thing. I actually have a lot of people watching both and then commenting on both and saying, hey, you didn't say this in the German one. Hey, you didn't say this in the English one. And also have some watchers from the US who watch the German ones to improve their German because they have German family or something.
Yeah.
So it's funny because people actually do that. They watch both and then they either comment on them and saying, you didn't say that there, or you say that differently there. And of course it will happen that you will explain it differently. Yeah.
I should do that to brush up on my German. I know whenever I like have had like friends over that either them or their wives or German, and like because I haven't spoke it in so long, like it takes me like a little bit, but once I start thinking about it, then like the words start coming back to me, and I always think to myself, oh, I should do something to practice this more, but I don't know anybody else that speaks German, so
you can do that.
But watching the videos, that would be a good idea.
Exactly. You can watch my videos in German, or you can use AI nowadays.
Yeah.
You can actually talk to AI in any language you want, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's just the internet is crazy, right?
Yeah.
Well, Roxy, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with me and all of the subscribers out there to the podcast. And those of you guys that have watched or listened to part or all of this, definitely take the chance to go down and hit the link in the show more, or in the podcast notes. There's a link that goes straight over to her YouTube channel. And from there, you can find the rest of her socials and her website and everything else like that. But really appreciate the time that you spent, and hopefully it was beneficial to people, because I know that there's a whole different audience that you're bringing to the table for me, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I hope it was interesting for you people out there, and I'm really looking forward to reading the comments later on.
Yeah, definitely. You know, that's the downside about podcasts, is the podcasts don't have like the community that you can get from YouTube. And the one thing that I can say about this podcast is I do it on YouTube because I think that the YouTube has a better way of like getting people to a podcast that they've never heard of. But realistically, most people start watching on YouTube and then they move to the app because it's like just easier. And so you don't get to always get all that interaction. So yeah, those of you that are watching on YouTube, please comment, hit like, hit subscribe, do all the YouTube-y things. And if none of that sounds good to you, at least remember this: it only takes a bike to be a biker. Get out and be one.
Bye.